Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Much appreciated. I am just going to pretty much pass the mic over. Before I do so, if you could just double check and make sure your cell phones, the ringers, are turned off, that would be greatly appreciated. Today, no questions are off the table, so as you look at the material and you listen to Anand and David and Sarah, make sure you save your questions for the end and make sure you ask them. We would like to have a lively conversation and discussion today. It's an exciting moment because I believe it's been not quite 25 years since Western Michigan University had a master campus plan. So this is a long time coming and a long time overdue. And with that, I'm going to let's get going. Sarah?
Good morning. Great to see everybody this morning. I'm Sarah Vanderveen. I'm the Senior Director of Planning, Design, and Construction, and I have the opportunity to share the opening of this. And really, I've only been here for about 4 months, a little more than 4 months now, and I have not been a part of the year-plus work that has gone into this, and Anand will actually get into even more work before the master plan work started. So this has been going on for a long time, and we're really excited to see the package of the master plan get wrapped up. But as we do that part of it and wrap up this package and this guiding tool that we're going to have going forward that outlines a vision for a vibrant campus, it is really the start of the next phases and the journey that it's going to be as we work towards getting to that vision. So we'll talk a little bit more about what the next steps after this is, and look forward to more dialogue. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to David Dakin, our Director of Planning, Space Management, and Capital Projects, and then partway through the presentation, Anand Sankey, our Manager of Facility Assets and Planning, is going to also speak and share a little bit about what we did during the master planning process with all the task force that were involved. So with that, David.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon. Oh, get a little ahead of myself. All right. Yeah. Well, some of you understand why I'm moving forward so fast, but anyway, that's another story. So today, as Sarah kind of indicated, we're going to talk about the master plan and some other associated parts, as well as the future of Western. Our agenda is the why master plan, master planning goals, planning principles, engagement process, assessment findings, sustainability impact, task force, which our colleague Anand will touch on, campus districts, and next steps. Why master plan? This master plan specifically really launches from our strategic plan, and its goal is to take our physical assets and align those with our strategic plan, our goals, our visions, our sense of place, big ideas, guidelines to help shape those big ideas. Also, to identify our needs and how we should best allocate our resources, improve efficiencies with those resources. What the process over this last year has generated is these core values. Again, and these come from our strategic plan as well as the input of a lot of people, a lot of sessions, and a lot of discussion. And those are, community engagement, equity-centered, discovery-driven, learner-focused, and sustainability guided. And those create these guiding principles of advanced learning and discovery, foster a sense of community, recalibration and sustainability, engaging the region, and promote health and equity. And the recalibration and sustainability is in the center of this graphic for a reason. What we've discovered through all the discussions with everyone, the focus of what we need to do as a campus from 2025 and moving forward beyond. We also developed some planning principles, and these are tools which people on campus and outside partners use to guide specific projects as they look to develop those on where on campus, how on campus, and how those get developed. Some of these really transferred over from the master plan, which Jan mentioned is like 25 years ago, but they still apply. And everyone that talked to resonated with these and moving these forward. Things like embrace mixed use districts, strengthen the valleys. Pedestrian is one of our core values that we work on just about every day, to be a pedestrian strong campus. Speaking of campuses, so the master plan focused on our 4 campuses, recognizing that we have other entities that are part of the university in different ways, whether it's our Grand Rapids campus, our medical school downtown, or the new event center, which some of our teams will be playing at. But what we focused on as the main East Campus, Parkview campus, and the aviation campus. And what's important to keep in mind is we talk about a lot of information that we gathered, a lot of thoughts, ideas. Those are all focusing slowly towards the idea of a vibrant and exciting campus. And how do we do that? This graphic, which you'll see again later, starts to give you a representation of creating these dense centers inside districts or hubs, whatever you want to call them. But they're basically is to take what we're doing, our activities, things we're focused on, and bring them together, create a density which adds to the vibrancy and excitement to be on campus. The engagement process, as Sarah mentioned, over the last year, this just kind of outlines that process with our workshops that we had and the different milestones up to where the Board of Trustees approved the master plan first week in February. But we want to emphasize that that's not the end all. In some ways, they approved the beginning or the start to start implementing some of these guiding principles and ideas, visions. This represents that process over the last year where we initiated the master planning process in December of 23, believe it or not, and the discovery of what Western's about, what are our challenges, what are our strengths, took in the big ideas. I mentioned there were literally hundreds of people involved in this process, from the open workshops. There were 10 user groups, there was an advisory committee that met, and all this came from that accumulation of groups of people spending their time and providing thoughts and ideas. And then with our partner Perkins and Will, we refined those and focused them and created those guiding principles and values. Why we were doing this, again, this has been touched on, is there was a parallel effort going on, and we'll talk about that a little bit more, that we started accumulating data and information. So it's great to have the visions and ideas, but what's even better is when you have data to help steer your direction or your thoughts or your vision. So we had 2 things going in parallel with the master planning process, the task forces, in which Anand will touch on, and those were interconnected through this process as well, as each group met with each other, shared information, and talked about what those data points and the visions met. As I mentioned, this isn't just about, as important as it is, the vision and ideas, but it's also about accurate information, data to help you shape those. Some of the information, for instance, we start out with is history of our enrollment and that density. What we saw, or others saw, that we took in on projections of enrollment staying pretty much flat. Two lines, one represents, the gold represents our square footage of our physical assets, the green, the FTEs, and what the goal is for those two lines to slowly come together so that we have the right amount of square footage, not only the right amount, but the right type of square footage for our enrollment and our FTE. And this is something that came out of information gathering, working with the Gordian Sightline groups. Before we even started the master plan, was looking at what we compared to our peers. And keep in mind, some people have pointed out, universities, by their nature, are institutions that aren't known to be extremely efficient. And so where we are, we're below our peers in that our density really needs to increase just to get to them. And again, that's not that high of a bar on there. So we have a ways to go. But here's important to know how far that is, because that will help you make informed decisions. This gives you that kind of graphic look at what that means. Is saw our enrollment go up, our physical plant increased, our enrollment shrank. Its brick and mortar obviously isn't quite as fluid, and it tends to lag behind. But what we need to do is to take that physical footprint and again, not only renew it and calibrate it, but also reorganize it into these vibrant hubs. This gives you some numbers on what I just was talking about. I think at our peak, we were nearly 8 million square feet, and we recognized that we reduce that, and we're about 6.5 now. And based on our partnership with Perkins Will, Sightlines and Gordians, the target was established at 5.3 million. And I want to stress that that's not just, well, you take out, 1.2 million square foot. It really is a reorganization and a renewal. And these numbers show you about how much we see that would be new construction, renovation, and we'll touch on this some more as we go, what that can look like. But it's really a reimagining of campus. And these next two slides, I think, are really impactful in that first, the gold bar there, just by recalibrating our campus, getting the right amount of square foot, huge impact on our sustainability, on our energy usage and our gas emissions. Again, just getting the right size footprint. It's almost the easy portion of this. There's a saying that says the most sustainable square foot is the one you don't have to build and or maintain. The other charts indicate how much we can increase sustainability with renovations, with more efficient buildings. Obviously, the return on those investment gets a little tighter as you pick the easy fruit first and it starts going down there. But this just gives you a rough idea of what's possible with new renovated buildings and reducing your square foot. And this is just the gases which follow along with the energy usage. Again, this has been a huge monumental effort that's long overdue, and it's not just a master planning process. We had these other processes going in parallel with cross connection that helped shape both their effort and the master planning effort. And talk in much more detail about that, as my colleague Anna Sankey will get into Great Western Task Forces.
Good afternoon, everybody. Excuse me. Before I take you through the 5 various task forces that were created, I'd like to recap a little bit on how we got here with the task forces. So in the fall of 2022, the university engaged with Sightline, or Guardian, and I'll just move forward using the word Sightline because along the way, Sightline's name changed to Guardian, and so we were interchangeably using it, but I'll just use it Sightline for the purposes of this presentation. There were 3 areas of focus with Sightline. One is that we wanted to understand the space utilization on campus, mainly focusing on teaching spaces. The second area of focus with Sightline was the facility condition of our various buildings on campus. And we did include the campus infrastructure, which is everything that's buried in the ground. And the third area was benchmarking against our peers in the areas of population across campus, what was the condition and the backlog of our buildings on campus, the energy use, benchmarking, and finally, the ratio of square footage versus the campus population. And when we talk about campus population, that's all, including students, faculty, staff, temps, and so forth. It's worth noting here that many universities across the country will either do a space utilization or a facility condition assessment independently. We got adventurous and we decided to take both on. And it was important and critical, and with the data that we got, it actually showed that it had value to have both data sets together to make decisions moving forward. So overall, what did it cover? It covered 96 buildings on campus, 6.5 million square feet, and it included all of Kalamazoo campuses, the Battle Creek Aviation, and the downtown Grand Rapids facility. A year later, some of you in this room, actually probably, yeah, some of you in this room were involved in the Sightline assessment where you helped gather the data and offer your thoughts. So a year later, Sightline presented to the senior leadership the results of the assessment in both areas. As a result of the presentation, Western Michigan University senior leadership decided to create several task forces to address some of the information that was presented. So what I'll be sharing with you in the next few slides is what the charge for each task force is, what they've accomplished up to this point in time, and what more they have to do or the next steps. Guess I'm not going to need that one. So Task Force A, which is teaching spaces. Centralized scheduling of all teaching spaces. What we realized is that we have a total of 554 teaching spaces on campus, of which 387 are controlled by the registrar's office, and 157 classrooms or teaching spaces are controlled by each of the colleges on campus. We realized that the registrar's spaces were in 25 Lite, which is a software program that schedules classrooms. However, the 157 spaces that colleges control were not in the database. And the charge was to centralize all teaching spaces into one software. The second charge was align cost capacity with enrollment in classroom seats. What this means is that over the last few decades, the data showed that we overbuilt larger classrooms than today's needs. We have more classrooms with 50 seats or more, when in reality, today's environment required more in the range of 20 to 30 seats. Give you an example. The benchmark across the country is every classroom should be about 70% full. So if this lecture hall or this auditorium has 100 seats, we hope to get about 70 seats filled for every class that is taught, which is about 70% position utilization. And that is what Task Force A is currently working on in trying to align the capacity of classes with the capacity of the rooms with the number of seats. The third charge was consolidation of buildings used for the summer, Fridays, and evening classes. The data through the assessment revealed what our utilization rates were. So for example, in the summer 1 and summer 2, we were at about 20% utilization rate across campus on all available classrooms. After 5 o'clock during the full semester, which is fall and spring, we were at about 15%. Can anyone maybe guess what our classroom utilization rate on Fridays is? If you get it right, you get free breakfast. 8. Pretty good. You must have attended last year. I presented and gave you that information, so that's why you remembered it. Then the final part of the charge of Task Force A was the fact that students had approached senior leadership and said they needed more collaboration space across campus. So one of the charges is to identify where the meeting rooms, conference rooms, places where students can meet. So we're currently in the process of picking that information up. That information will be imported into 25 Live. Students, faculty, and staff will be able to access that software and schedule rooms across campus so they can use it as needed. So at this point in time, a year later, approximately a year later, all classroom spaces or teaching spaces have been centralized into the software and will be scheduled through the software. Task Force A has already aligned classroom capacity with the size of the classroom, and they continue to work on consolidation of summer after 5 o'clock and Friday. So what that means basically is they're looking at not keeping all buildings open all the time from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., but maybe recalibrate and use the best classrooms that we have for those low periods of time. It's not currently accomplished, but they're currently working on it. And as I mentioned earlier, once we have the data of where all the conference meeting rooms and so forth are, that will be put into 25 Live and will be available for people to use. Task Force B, space optimization to maximize strategic investment. Develop guidelines to assess campus buildings to decommission and significant renovations. Along what David mentioned, recalibration of campus, looking at right-sizing campus, getting the right density. While Sightline had identified approximately $400 million in backlog for deferred maintenance across all 96 buildings, what they did not do is they did not walk the buildings in detail or talk to the occupants of the building. So what a subset of Task Force B did, a smaller group within Task Force B, is we walked approximately 24 buildings equaling about 22.4 million square feet, and we spoke to people, and we went into private spaces, and we tried to understand a little bit better of how buildings are being used, whether it's available to be adaptable to the future of what we want to use it for, and so forth. And each of those buildings were rated beyond just the fact that what was the age of the building and what's the backlog of the physical assets. It's through a scoring process that the Task Force B did. That scoring process was very much in alignment with the strategic plan and its core values. Provided recommendations to leadership regarding annual state capital outlay request. Interesting to note that as we were walking through these buildings last fall, there was a request on whether we could assess North Hall. I'm just going to give you an example of how this subset of this task force made a recommendation and moved forward with something. The leadership asked if we could evaluate North Hall on its utilization and condition and whether we needed to continue to leave it open. So Task Force B subset walked North Hall, reviewed it, and determined that North Hall was not needed currently with all the spaces we have. So the recommendation was made to the senior leadership to decommission or close North Hall. And as a result, about a month ago, officially North Hall was closed and taken off. As a result of that, North Hall had about $4.8 million of deferred maintenance. And as a result of closing it, we were able to offset that $4.8 million that we don't need to reinvest and maintain that building. As I mentioned, the accomplishments is that there is a scoring method. Task Force B is going to continue to walk remaining buildings on campus this spring, continuing into the summer. Of the 24 buildings, we probably have another 25 to 30 buildings to complete. And the task force will proceed with more on-site visits. The one part about state capital outlay is some of you might know that state capital outlay request that we submit among all the 15 institutions and 22 community colleges across Michigan has been going on for decades. What's different this time is that the Task Force B is going to be working towards putting their recommendations to senior leadership. It's going to be more inclusive and transparent. The two most recent projects where some of you might remember where state capital outlay was approved and given to Western Michigan University was the Aviation School in Battle Creek and Dunbar Hall, of which we received 75% matching funding. $30 million for Dunbar, and how much was it for the aviation? $15 million for the aviation. Task Force C, master plan, that was the one David was talking about that was running parallel to the various task force. As of February 6th, the Board of Trustees had approved the master plan. And as Sarah and David mentioned, in some ways, that's just the start of the next phase. While we have a roadmap of where we're going, we now need to continue to engage the campus community in order to implement that plan. So you will see a lot more, hear a lot more about the master plan coming up in the next months and years, and as we have conversations about what campus is going to look based on the vibrancy that we're hoping to achieve. Task Force D, space management software implementation. As part of this whole entire plan of where we are heading, one of the things we discovered was we did not have a dedicated space management software tool. Everyone is familiar with Bronco Fixit, TMA, and so forth, but it really wasn't built as a space management software tool. So we decided that we would go out and find a space management software tool. While we were talking about that and looking into options for a space management software tool, there were two other entities on campus that was also looking for something to manage what they were doing. And those two entities were the space claim or this SRM budget model. They wanted something too that they can actually track who owns what space on campus. Simultaneously, in the conversations across campus, research area also wanted a software package. So it was determined that we would combine all three needs and competitively bid out a software package. The second part of the software package is it needed a survey tool where at a predetermined time, we could send out a survey in order for the information to be refreshed. In other words, we would gather all the data this year. Then at a set frequency, we would send out a request to see if the information was still current and relevant. So this software tool that we purchased has that ability. The third component of the software tool was visualization of floor plans. It's good to have a software package that tracks the details pertaining to all the spaces on campus, but we wanted a software tool that could take floor plans and color-code it and identify the areas in which departments and colleges own, as well as other representations such as who owns what space and so forth. So this software also has the ability to visualize in color code form, and it's available through the web, and so it is something where it's not restricted, but it can be available based on who needs it and so forth. Overall, to put it in context, by the time this initiative is completed, which we hope to have it completed in June of 2025, we will have approximately 400 floor plans uploaded into the system, all color-coded based on needs. And by the end of June, we hope to have 14,000 spaces identified across campus in the software package as well. Task Force E, which is actually tied in many ways to Task Force A and B, and the reason is because it's called Instructional Reinvestment Strategy. Develop technology guidelines for teaching spaces. Unknown to me, and now I know this information, classroom technology across campus has evolved so much that at one point in time, we had 17 different options on what classroom technology can exist in each classroom. The task force has now narrowed it down to 5 options. So when a classroom gets upgraded or a building gets built, you can pick from 5 different classroom technologies, whether it's in-person or hybrid. Unify where Office of Information Technology and Facilities Management invest in teaching spaces in collaboration with the registrar. What this means basically is because we have more classrooms, 554 or 387 that's controlled by the registrar, there isn't sufficient money to reinvest and keep up with all those classrooms. So we're looking at a strategic plan here on working with the registrar's office to figure out the utilization rate of these classrooms and where strategically we need to reinvest in. Because at this point in time, we cannot invest in all those classrooms and maintain it at the life cycle that is expected. Develop assessment process annually for condition of spaces. Facilities management and OIT and the registrar's office have agreed that on an annual basis, they will do an evaluation of each classroom, whether that's classroom technology for IT or whether it's the condition of the carpet, the lighting, the chairs, and so forth, and they'll be rated. And then they will determine basically which classrooms require the most amount of investment. Provide renovation replacement schedule, plan updates, timelines, and rationale. To be transparent on where the money is going to be reinvested, this task force has decided to publicize the locations moving forward on the buildings and the classrooms in which we'll be reinvesting our money in. So far, they have developed the technology guidelines from 17 to 5 options. They have finalized the annual space condition assessment between OIT and FM. FM has been doing it for some time. OIT has been doing it for some time annually. They're now combining efforts and developing a unified assessment annually. Next steps is to align teaching spaces and building optimization task force investment of assets, talking about collaboration with task force A, B, and others to make sure everyone's in alignment. So in other words, task force E doesn't go and invest in North Hall when North Hall has been determined that it's not going to be a building that's open or we're going to continue to reinvest in it. And finally, streamline OIT product across units for procurement, implementation, and eliminate unsupported technology. Basically creating a process from cradle to grave and where you can purchase, install, and utilize technology in a unified process. Finally, Task Force R. Centralized research information, organized, which is actually external research and internal research in space software. And that is to take all the research spaces we have and put it into the space management software. As of now, we have completed external research, identifying where they are across campus. And as of last week, all information has been exported into the software. We're now currently working on internal research spaces across campus, and we hope to be completed by June of 2025. Collect room attributes for each space. Over the years, I've personally experienced that sometimes research will identify a room and decide to put equipment in there and come to find out it doesn't have the right cooling capacity, the heating capacity, the power requirements, or other utilities that are needed, at which point in time we scramble to figure out how to make all of this work. This is the initiative where we pick up attributes in the room, such as what's the power availability, the cooling limitations, and so forth, and put it in the software so that when research decides that they want to identify a space, we have that in the database to tell them whether that space can accommodate the needs of that research that they're thinking of putting into that space. Develop reports for facilities and administrative and department needs. This is a federal requirement where if you do external research every 3 to 4 years, you have to submit to the federal government a report. And so this software package will allow us to do that. Accomplishments, collecting organized external research attributes, completed February of 2022. Internal research will be completed in June of 2025. Next steps is just to continue with more attributes and develop those reports that the federal government or the vice president of research or the colleges need. So with that said, those are the various task forces that are currently in place. Much has been accomplished. I am optimistic that many of these task forces will continue to accomplish what's been set forth. And overall, I would say that has been about 80 people that have been involved in these various task forces from across campus. And I've been pleased with how much has been accomplished. And I think we'll be successful moving forward to meet the charges set forth. Thank you.
Thanks, Anand. Okay, so it's still morning, right? I'm still good? Okay. All right, so we have a tremendous amount of information, accurate information, the data, ideas, vision. What are we going to do now? So, what the master planning process took the initial step, and I want to emphasize, this is not, don't take this literally, this is sort of your first go around in taking the vision, the information and data, which provides a direction for us, provides some guardrails that gets us heading in the right direction and not wandering every which way in direction. We don't know how fast we're actually going to be able to move. There's still a lot more variables that impacts that, or exactly what that path will be, because it will change as more information becomes available. But we are starting to do things. We are starting to move in that direction, and this is effort to start that process. It's called a framework plan, which is basically those guardrails and goals to work with. And so what you're looking at here are buildings that red are possible new buildings as well as actual new buildings. You'll see the new Valley Residence Hall going in, as well as possibly another one. You'll see new buildings where the Bernhardt Center used to be. Yellow are buildings which have been identified with the task forces and with the master planning process that have been identified as buildings in most need of renovation that we want to keep and put resources into in a long-term effort as we try to renew campus and to reorganize it. Part of that reorganization is creating districts on campus. Now, this is not going to be something you find in the wayfinding. It's a tool to have us identify parts of campus and some unique qualities on those parts and how we can create these dense hubs within those districts. This is just an aerial shot of those districts on our campus showing some existing buildings and some potential new building, various locations. So we came back to this representation of this effort of creating a vibrant campus. And it's kind of a simple rule, and if you've got 100 people doing their activities and doing what they do, spread out over 100 acres, it just doesn't feel like there's really much going on. Take those same people, same districts, activities, and put them on an acre, and there's like, wow, there's something going, there's something exciting happening, as long as your density doesn't reach too high. Kind of going back to the classroom where you don't really want to fill your classrooms because you have to have some flexibility. But we really want to densify and focus our resources in these hubs. And again, this is sort of a artist rendering how this exactly looks. It'll be interesting to come back in 30 years and see how close or what it actually looks like. We also recognize that in between these dense centers, these vibrant locations are threads that connect those, and that those are very important as we develop campus. This just is a list of some of those strategies about taking some buildings down, renovating, building new, working with some of our external partnerships, developing the campus. So current and future opportunities, again, here's some possibilities of buildings we've identified that could be renovated, building new buildings on our campus, along with some artist rendering of what that could look like, that sort of vibrancy. A is basically you're standing with the student rec center behind you, looking up the hill where the Burnhouse Center used to be, with a possible building that location, a new gateway, and we'll actually touch on what we're actually proceeding with in this location here shortly. B is you're up on top of the hill now looking back. And again, maybe a picture of what it could look like, what the vision could actually manifest into. And then C is in the valleys, increasing the intramural field areas, improving those, and you're actually looking towards the Valley Dining Center and the new hall that is going in, and possibly another. We also recognize that we're not an island. We've met with our neighborhoods, we've met with the city, we're quite a few times, we're continuing to meet. The connection to downtown, both in vehicular and pedestrian movement, as well as the creek. That will be ongoing. The city is this spring starting on a selection and design process to rework the roads there just east of us, and which their hope will be in 2027. They'll have a final design and construction. And as Sarah mentioned, and she'll expand on that, is this has got us to the starting gate, and we take off from here.
David and Anand. Well, as we mentioned, this was taken to the Board of Trustees in early April, good grief, February. We're in March, it was February, not quite March, okay. It's morning still, morning, okay. And one of the things that we want to do as we move forward is look at how this information is going to be shared across our website platform. And the Planning, Design, Construction website has changed a little bit, but the master plan is still a link out there, and we will continue to use that as a place to communicate efforts and as well as post things like the public presentations that we've been doing. This really is the start of the next piece. And there aren't specific timelines set up with this, but as we start down this journey, we're going to be developing those. And this is really, it's that framework for the foundation of developing our campus in support of the strategic plan. The task forces will continue to do their work, and we hope to actually have some maybe standing committees out of that and some additional development as we identify other areas that we're going to be looking into in a deeper way as we knit these things together. It's not going to be a straight line. We're going to work our way through a plan and work towards that vision, and there'll be outside forces that change things along the way, and we'll have this plan to come back to as sort of a foundation, a place to come back and check in on those ideas. How is it meeting the long-term vision of where we're going? So we're excited about that, and we're excited to continue having those public input sessions and recognizing how important it's been through all the development of this information to continue that dialogue so that we're making decisions together. So with that, we'll open it up to questions, and we can go back in the slides if there's a question about a particular slide.
Quite as clearly this time, but compared to our peers, campus size and behind the curve on
We're making the case is, we have too much square footage, we have too many parking spaces, too many roads. Then you really want to bring that to your FTEs.
I think the parking got a reaction.
I'm sure it would. Does that make sense? Is that, I mean, the primary driving force is what we're here for, is student education. So if you look at our enrollment, that is your starting point. Where are you at in your enrollment? That equates to where you should be at with your infrastructure, your square footage. And we are way too high, and that needs to come down. And then certainly, then you need your FTEs to maintain that square footage, your sweet spot. So,
I don't need money. The question is, where do you see our enrollment in?
well, that's somewhat of a educated guess, and people smarter than said our enrollment looks to be basically flat for the next 10 years. And they're looking at, you know, high school graduation in the Midwest. They're looking at a number of factors. And who's to say for absolutely sure, but that's what we're working with on the projection, that it's going to be basically flat as it is right now for about 10 years. That is what I would say most of the institutions. My colleagues around the country, with the exception of like some of the big flag schools or some of the Southwest schools out in California and Arizona and Florida, for the vast majority of us, that's the reality, is that the enrollment is declining or it's flat just by the high school student. Well, that is a good point. And as I mentioned, bricks and mortar, and this is part of the nuance, is really, it's hard to quick build a building, take it down. So you have to, kind of like with the classrooms, is we don't want to hit a mark where we're absolutely full. You've got to have some flexibility. So if enrollment does start to go up, you've got some time there, you've got some space that you can utilize while you then try to add square footage on there. It'd be a nice problem to have, but there is a strategy. And this is kind of goes back to what I talked about is, you know, next year we'll be constantly assessing it, and really every 5 years you need to take a hard look at your master plan and see where you're at, where you could be heading. Because say in 5 years, again, those smart people are saying, hey, you know what, enrollment's going to start, we see it's going to start to increase. And this gives us a chance to react to it, and react to it in a way, in a direction that maximizes our resources, as opposed to not having a master plan. Well, right. This is a good debate that goes on amongst I think university is our change and rate of change is such that do you really want to have 50-year envelope or buildings that can't accommodate? And our approach has been, we're going to be here for a long time, and so that building envelope can be here a long time, but we do have to be more flexible on the interior so that it can change to how we're teaching classes, the things we're doing in there. And again, it's a challenge because it's hard to build and unbuild as fast as our society rate of change is on there. But we can't, nobody's saying to build the ivory tower on the hill that is there for 100 years, because it just, even if it's in great shape, it becomes programmatically obsolete. Hold on one second, we have another one, we'll get back to you.
I just have one more.
Well, our student affairs folks have done a more in-depth study on their projection of the housing need based on that enrollment. And so and it's a perfect example of what this master plan is saying is we need to renew our housing, we need to take down the old inefficient and build new that attracts students and is much more energy efficient. And again, the target is to build enough beds to house the students that are coming to campus, not have extra beds or not come up short. And that's basically the strategy that we're implementing.
That was part of my question is, I've seen them come and I've seen them build them up. And we build them up, and there it is all pretty, until the next building comes along, and we got another pretty new building, and this one, suddenly.
Yeah, could you talk in the mic so people can hear you?
We need to maintain as we rebuild. Don't just go to the next shiny bright, which is what we do. Sorry. Sanguine, it's got issues and it's a new building. But look over here at the student center. Woo! New building. Till the next new building comes along, and then it's look over here in the valley. We got a new dorm. We need to put aside money to maintain instead of going, it's on a deferred maintenance list. That's our favorite list, deferred maintenance. Well, no. Take care of what we have as we're building it, because it's not going to last. Like we speak of the ones that are built in the 50s that are still around.
Well, identified was, and you look at, certainly we've never built a perfect building. There's always challenges. But if you look at the sightlines assessment, our newer buildings require a lot less maintenance and such. Our big deferred maintenance are with our older buildings. And again, what we looked at is what of those buildings does it make sense to put our resources into and to maintain, and others where it does not make sense. And if you shrink your footprint, you have more resources per square foot than you would otherwise. And that is, again, part of the strategy is to really be efficient so that we can spend our resources on our new and our existing square footage.
So I just kind of want to add to that. We do not have enough dollars for maintenance. I think all of us in the room, I think, realize that. But what I will say is in the last 10 years, 15 years, we have been much more thoughtful, sophisticated on focusing those dollars to get the best benefit we can for the university. I would also share, I think it was probably about 4 years now, the president and the cabinet did allocate an additional $4 million each year for maintenance. That is the first time we had an increase in funding for maintenance base that I can remember in my very long career. So again, recognize the need. I would say to Chad and Anand and David and Sarah and their team, many of you here have a very intensive process each year working together to identify the worst of the needs so we address them. We also keep a little money back because we all know emergencies happen, and chemistry is a really good example a couple weeks ago, and we need to take care of it. We've also tried to figure out how to do more differently, achieve the same results. Roofing's a good example. What we've done for roofing has cost less than 50% of how we used to roof buildings when we could. So we got a long ways to go. I don't want to say we don't have the need. We do have the need. We're trying to work it.
Yeah, and Western is by no means unique with the challenges. Across the country, the physical footprint of institutions are wearing on those resources. Well, I will say what Western is doing, which we're not aware of any other institution, is taking this full, with all the data and the vision, and really being proactive at attacking those challenges.
New buildings that you possibly propose, like by the, with all the buildings by like the heights and everything that you have new proposed, like the Student Success and Health Center right here, there's not a lot of parking over there to begin with, and you're taking out lot 68, 69, and it looks like
More parking.
and it looks like you even maybe possibly taking out half of lot 48. 47's always full, 41's for Sangren, and 48's all employee parking. So is there any plans to add additional parking for those buildings?
Well, our parking is like our buildings. We've done audits, and actually we have more parking spaces than what we need for our current enrollment. But are they in the right location? Probably not. So like our buildings, we need to reallocate and renew and reorganize the parking. And each district will look at that, because those hubs, the parking really needs to be associated with those hubs while maintaining one of our main goals of being a pedestrian campus and having parking around the edges, around the ring. So it's a resource that we have to manage. Okay.
Yeah, so most of us aren't going to like the changes that are coming down, because all of us like to have a parking lot as close as we can get to our building. We carry things in the morning, we walk out, we have snow, we have ice. Our landscaping does a great job in keeping sidewalks. But the reality is parking's going to be pushed on the perimeters of campus over time, whether it's through parking structures, larger lots, and we all are going to be walking more in the upcoming years. And I think it's hard for us, because I know I have personally been spoiled when I worked at Wallwood or in the administration building to have really close parking. And we are taking out lots, especially really popular lots. I also know parking takes a hit. So like the parking changes we made around Ellsworth, the occupants of the building take it very personally when we take away the parking. And I think that will be the future for quite a while to come. And yes, the 2 parking lots that the people love who work in Siebert will be going away this summer. I just got to say, so.
Excuse me, Warren.
Sure.
So I have a recommendation. So like when you're building new buildings, maybe do better like meeting with every department for their needs for like maintenance and Mac rooms that they're going to need for those buildings. Like custodial, some of our closets in the new buildings, we can't even fit our machines in them. So they basically give us a broom closet. Well, the days of using broom closets are we have big Kaizens, we have big floor machines, we have riding vacuums. And we literally can't pull these into our closets, and even we have to pull everything out of our closet to just use the sink. So maybe meeting with each director of their prospected area. For example, outside, we go to do the windows and there's no water sources outside. There's no electric sources. There's no access to bring a lift because you guys build a building full of glass, but there's no access to do the windows. So maybe better planning with the actual directors and their needs to upkeep the building. Maintenance in the proper, like I said, mech rooms and landscaping, and how are they gonna water these plants that are all around this building with no water? And just, like I said, just meeting with the, how we're gonna maintain them.
I think that's an excellent point, and I think that it is something that, as we move forward, we're going to need to be more intentional about having those conversations earlier in the design process. And somewhere along the way, maybe we used to do that a little bit more, and then we kind of got out of the habit. And I'm hopeful that as we sort of reshape the planning, design, and construction team and what we're doing and how we're going to engage with folks, that can be a part of a concerted effort to think about sustainability of our structures and make sure that we're building things that are maintainable with our staff and with, how we are organizing and designing those spaces. One of the things I wanted to mention too is we are getting ready to embark on a pretty large effort to go through every building again and do some space verification. So Anand talked a little bit about what Sightlines did, and they did a sort of big picture building assessment and looked at systems in buildings and understood space at a very large scale. But we're getting ready to embark on an effort to go back to 48 of our buildings that we want to double check all of the simple floor plans to make sure things are accurate, that we know the data that's going into the software that Anand talked about has the right information so that we can identify where are the custodial spaces, how are things categorized, where are the opportunities in buildings where spaces may be underutilized, where are there things that could change to help meet those needs as we're going forward. So over the next several months, some of our project managers from both the planning, design, construction, as well as our operations team are going to be working on going through with building coordinators and department leads to verify spaces. And I think that'll be a good effort. It'll help us to have that data as we're going in to do planning work as well. So thank you for that comment.
I'm curious, it's touched on a little bit, and I'd like to hear more detail about how staffing levels are considered, if at all, in this plan, because something that was commented about, a new building requires less maintenance. Sometimes it's the opposite, because the more efficient something is, the harder it is to maintain. And we need more input, like you said, on the front end, and like Cindy commented, with the tradespeople that need to maintain this stuff and know what it's going to take to maintain this stuff. And because we're not seeing it. I mean, our staffing levels and maintenance are ridiculously low. And we're not seeing the investment in the personnel to maintain these buildings that we're building. We can't hire tradespeople. We have outsourced entire trades because of the university's lack of willingness to invest in what it takes to attract employees. And I'm not criticizing, that's just a fact. There's been open electrician positions here since COVID, several. We get 5 people apply for a job and walk away when they learn what the wage and benefit package is going to be. That's not rocket science, that we know why they're walking away. And I don't want to focus on that, but it going forward on new buildings, I mean, we're even having our engineers asked to sit down and shut up when they're pointing out shortcomings in the construction. And then a building ends up being a maintenance nightmare, not a low maintenance, simply because of the materials that were used, the fixtures that were used, the carpet that was used. So if we get in on the front end, we can magnify this and be even more efficient and going forward, and that benefits everybody. So could you speak more on how the FTEs are considered?
I'll speak a little bit to that. I think it goes back to the question about how to have people more involved at the front end so that we can together sort of manage resources and look at the sustainability of our facilities that we're getting built. And it is true that when there's new buildings, there's new systems, there's new types of technology. It's different than our old 1950s building stock, and things don't have the same kind of life cycle that they used to have. But we're finding different efficiencies with energy and the programmatic importance of those new facilities and what they're able to meet. So trying to figure out that balance is really critical. And I think earlier I mentioned that this movement through to get to the vision of where we're headed is not going to be a straight path. And I think we're going to see some of those ebbs and flows of, you know, right now we're crunched, and when we get rid of, you know, some other portion of our, we've got Bernhardt came down, that changed the landscape of the work that we have to do. And I think that as we go through that plan, there's going to be this up and down of balancing act of trying to figure out where those resources are going. But did you want to add to this?
Again, I want to acknowledge the comments made. So we have not always done a good job of integrating the skill and knowledge of our feet on the ground, whether it's landscaping, maintenance, as we design or open new buildings. And because of that, we have had problems. So we recently, I understand, and can be corrected if I'm wrong, but we did bring in engineering for the Valley 3. Probably could have done it sooner, but we did it in time, and I want to acknowledge that the team there pointed out issues with the design. They said there was a lot of complicated equipment we didn't need. I understand it saved about $100,000. They knew how our campus worked and made suggestions in the process. We need to do more of that, and we need to do it sooner, because you do have the skill and expertise that can help us build a better campus for our future students, faculty, and staff. And I don't think we've done a good job of asking you to help us do that. It is. I mean, obviously, when you have square foot, you have FTE calculations per square foot. I don't think, though, necessarily as we look at it, as our buildings change, as our needs change, we haven't always looked at what are the different skills we need to move forward. Nothing stays static. That's true even in my world of accounting. Things I used to do aren't done anymore. There's a machine that does it. Instead, the level of sophistication, even in my world of finance, has significantly changed. So as we go forward, we are going to have to look at all that. What are our needs? How are we going to do business? And I have always suggested, as I come across people, if you see something you're doing that does not make any sense to you, please ask the question, because you know it better than us who aren't doing it every day. And I know sometimes you think, well, they really don't want to hear. I've always been pretty open to learning about how we can do something better than we're currently doing and make everybody's life easier.
There's one in the back.
I'm working on it. I'm coming.
You're good. This is a quick one for you. So I saw on the map, there's like a lot of green space, it looks like, in the future plan. Is that right? So is that just going to be straight lawn, or is there hope for some of that to become more naturalized? Because I saw the word sustainability thrown around a lot.
It's really a mix. And as we develop what David was talking about earlier with the spaces in between the nodes of activity and that those paths that people travel, trying to be intentional about making those strong connections, but being able to navigate through that and enjoy the campus. So I think it's a mix, and I don't think it's predetermined necessarily. But certainly, as we change the footprint of our campus and we have buildings that go away, and buildings that come in that are new, there's going to be those changes along the way of what the kind of outdoor space would be. But there's nothing that's necessarily predetermined. This coming summer, starting in May, we're going to be working on changing the pathway at Michigan Avenue so that that is one of our first larger projects that we've been working on since early this past summer in 2024. And that space will have both a combination of hardscape and landscape as you enter the campus there along Michigan Avenue. Or questions?
Well, that's news to me. What you'll see in the master plan, because we heard from we talked to all the different departments that came in, and many of them said, it'd be great if our department was in one building or we were next to this group. And that's really what the master plan was showing was some synergies that could occur. So it didn't say, well, if these all groups get together, well, then we're going to tear this building down. There's a whole lot more assessment that goes into that. And there are buildings that we've identified that we see are long-term that we want to put resources in. And there's buildings that we're not going to for the long term, but we recognize we have to maintain our buildings where we have people in them. So and again, I don't take it literally because those things could change. What we will be doing is we'll be shrinking our square footage, but again, exactly how we do that is yet to be determined. And when, yeah, the timing is still just unknown.
So actually, that's kind of why we're looking at it. If we can consolidate classrooms, and Anand's nodding, so I know I'm going the right direction. If we can consolidate our activities in fewer buildings and close down, we can change our cleaning scheduling to coincide with usage, which also then means, again, it goes back to Dennis's point too. As we look at our staffing, if we don't have to do as much, and it goes back to the landscaping question from up at the top too, if we have more naturalized area, we don't have to mow as much. So all those things are part of the conversation as we move forward. No, different. Yeah. Good question and good point. Okay, I see one more. Carmela went up to the top, and then I'll have her come back down. We're having her get her workout on the steps there, going up and down.
I don't have to go to the gym. Just today. Does that mean that some of us custodial become seasonal workers?
Now, this is not at all. I mean, again, if you listen to the theme, I think we all would like to make sure that we have our resources that we can direct. So that was not at all a reflection on changing or decreasing staffing size. I didn't want to create that fear or anxiety. Thank you for asking that question.
What I want to know is if we're taking down buildings and building new ones, why are we not focusing on buildings that we have now that leak roofs and that have plumbing problems, and rather than building new buildings that we don't really need right now because you said we're cutting down on square feet. So why are we not focused on the buildings that we already have instead of building new ones?
So I think do you guys want me to do this first? I took over the mic. Okay, just checking. I didn't want to be a mic hog on it. So I think first you have to ask the question of what goes into deciding to build a new building or not. And so if we look at campus right now, the new building is Valley 3. And as we look at students and as we talk to people who are interested in being students who go elsewhere, our Valley 3 is primary for freshmen, first time ever. They're the buildings from the 60s. They don't have air conditioning. They don't appeal to people who are coming to college. So that is why that's being built. We also will build a building, and I'm just being very practical. If we can get money from the state to defray 50 to 75% of a cost of a building that we also know has a lot of maintenance needs, we're going to take advantage of that opportunity because our investment's really small versus what we get out of. Again, already acknowledged that we have buildings that have issues. On and reference the 400 million backlog. We all know it. We walk those buildings. We are never going to have enough resources to make all the repairs that are necessary. It's just the reality. I wish it was not the reality, but it is. So what we do is the money we have, we prioritize it based on what a team, and it's a team that tells me, I don't decide, but it involves the whole facilities management team, and maybe they also need to talk to you all more as they go through their list. But they tell me on an annual basis what are the priorities and where they're at. And that's what directs the investment decisions. And then if there is an unexpected failure, which happens based on the conditions, then we take care of that too. So that's the process used. And there will always be greater need out there than we can address.
I do want to point out that, I mean, that is a good point, and the buildings that we built new have been replacements, but not new square footage in the sense of addition. So, for instance, the new Sangren Hall replaced the old Sangren Hall, which had a tremendous deferred maintenance list. The new Sangren Hall is actually a smaller footprint. The new Student Center has a smaller footprint than the Bernhardt Center. So the new Valley has a smaller footprint than the old Valley. So in some ways, we are accomplishing that by getting addressing those deferred maintenance, those leaky roofs, by removing them and replacing them with new, yet smaller.
I was just going to, I know we're running late, so please feel free to leave. I know we had a question here, if we could take the question.
Just one additional comment to add to the question about looking at where are we putting those dollars. And I think one of the things that the master plan is going to help us going forward is to really understand which buildings have a really long vision for our campus that meet programmatic needs that can be changed and enhanced to continue being a great asset for the university, and some buildings that maybe are more difficult to meet programmatic needs. They're not located in a place that helps to further the strategic plan. So as we utilize the master plan going forward, it is going to help us to have those conversations about where to make those investments of dollars. So I just wanted to share that. Where's the one other question?
Wasn't really a question, but I wanted to say, although we appreciate you guys having outside groups come in and make all these assessments, we're your people that you should be talking to because we know what we need. And with the parking lots, you had an outside group come in and decide what parking lots needed to go and what needed to stay, but you should really be talking to us because we talk to the students every day and we talk to the employees every day, and we know what they need. That's all.
Well, thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you, Jan, for breakfast. Thanks, and we'll continue the conversation.